afternoon, and on behalf of the Policing Board, I'd like to welcome you to the launch of the Police Property Fund Small Grant Scheme. For those who don't know, my name is Doug Garrett, and I'm Chair of the Northern Ireland Policing Board, and I'm joined this afternoon by Dolores Kelly, who's Chair of the Board's Partnership Committee, and the Chief Constable, Simon Byrne, and you'll hear from both of those later on. We're hoping holding this launch as a webinar today, which will allow you to submit any questions that you may have. And please, can you submit them under the Q&A function and not the chat function? Sarah Reid, from the Board Partnership Manager, will be answering your questions actually as we go through this session on the Q&A function, and there'll be an opportunity for some more questions from the panel at the end. We also have following that, an opportunity for people to hopefully get involved in looking at getting their applications in as soon as possible. So some background to the Property Fund, Police Property Fund, generated through assets seized by the PSNI as a result of criminal investigations where the owners of the assets cannot be ascertained, or where there is no court order in respect of the assets. The police property regulations for Northern Ireland enable the Board to make payments to organisations for charitable purposes using the resources available in the Police Property Fund. Now, as the fund has been not been allocated for a number of years, the Board have been able to develop and agree both a large and small grant scheme that will be implemented over the next few years. The Board has agreed to a single call for applications to the large grant scheme, but there will be multiple calls for the small grant scheme, likely to be on an annual basis. The Board have also agreed that the small grant scheme will launch first, and that's what we're launching today. The Board has agreed that 80% of available funds will be allocated to the small grant scheme. The total available funds for the first call of applications, which opens today, is £100,000, and applications can be made for funding of between £1,000 and £10,000. A second call for applications is expected next year, following an evaluation of the projects which are first funded. The large grant scheme, which will open later this year, will invite applications for projects of £20,000 to £30,000, with a requirement that projects are more strategic in nature. The overall aims of both schemes are to encourage communities who do not normally engage with the PSNI or the policing and community safety partnerships to become more engaged, and to encourage participation in community safety activities and contribute to building confidence in policing. These aims are consistent with, and indeed complementary to, the aims and objectives that have been identified for the Northern Ireland Policing Plan 2020 to 2025. Both schemes will be managed and implemented by a programme team within the Policing Board. So, with that being said, by way of background, I now just want to introduce Dolores Kelly and ask her to say give us some further detail around the application criteria. Dolores.
Thanks very much, Doug. I would also like to thank you for joining us today for the launch of the Police Property Fund Small Grant Scheme. I know I speak for the whole Board when I say that we are very pleased to be able to finally launch the Police Property Fund and the first call of the Small Grant Scheme. Doug has outlined the overarching aims of the funding. I would now like to take you through the funding criteria to help you decide whether your project idea fits and would it be eligible. In order to be eligible for funding, your organisation must be constituted, and you will be required to provide evidence of this as part of the application process. It is important to let you know what the small grant scheme within the Police Property Fund will not support. It will not support individual or private sector businesses, politically based activities, projects led by the PSNI or policing and community safety partnerships. However, either can be project partners. Events or activities for which the principal aim is to fundraise, capital funding, salaries or overheads, unless they are integral to the project and appropriately proportioned, or projects where the main applicant and main project activity is outside Northern Ireland. The police property regulations for Northern Ireland requires that the funds are allocated for charitable purposes. In applying to the small grant scheme, your project must align to one or more charitable purpose. In defining charitable purposes, the board has agreed to use the following charitable purposes as outlined in the 2008 Charities Act: the advancement of education, the advancement of health or saving of lives, the advancement of citizenship or community development, the advancement of the arts, culture, heritage or science, the advancement of amateur sport, the advancement of human rights, conflict resolution or reconciliation, or the promotion of religious or racial harmony or equality and diversity, or the advancement of environmental protection or improvement. You will be asked to demonstrate in the application form how your project aligns to one or more of these charitable purposes. There are two other key criteria that you must demonstrate that your project meets. You will be asked to demonstrate engagement with the PSNI as part of your proposal, and that it makes a contribution to community safety and/or building confidence in policing in your area. For the small grant scheme, your project can have a duration of up to 24 months, and you're asked to indicate the duration of your project within the application form. To apply to the small grant scheme, you can download an application form from the Policing Board website. Alternatively, you can request a hard copy from the board. A guidance for applicants document, which provides support in completing the application form, is available as part of the application documents, and I would recommend that you read this before starting your application form. In addition, we have provided a frequently asked questions document at both the fund and scheme level to assist you. A webinar film is also available on the board's website to take you through the process and provide some support in what is required. Make sure that you fully complete all areas of the form and send requested accompanying documents when submitting to avoid your application being removed from the process. In recognition of the current circumstances that we're all living in, the board has agreed that this call will be open for 16 weeks. Therefore, applications will close for this call at 12 noon on the 8th of July 2021. If you have any additional queries in relation to the process, you can contact the programme team by emailing them at policepropertyfund@nipolicingboard.org.uk. Alternatively, you can contact the team by calling 028 90 40 8500. Before we show you the webinar film, which you can view at any stage via our website, I would like to thank you for joining us today and for your interest in the scheme. And we're now going to show a short film.
I will now take you through the application form, starting with section 1. In this section, we want some details about you and your project. Complete the name of your organisation, its address, including postcode, and the date your organisation was constituted. Don't forget that a copy of your organisation's constitution should be sent in with your completed application form. Tell us the title of your project. To allow us to keep in touch with you, please tell us who the main contact for the project will be and include their email address, postal address, including their postcode and their contact number. You should also provide the position they hold in your organisation. Also, let us know if you have any project partners. As the Policing Board provides funding and support to policing and community safety partnerships in each council, we'd like to know if your local PCSP is involved in your project. Finally, in this section, confirm by ticking this box that the project is not receiving funding from other public sources. If this box is not ticked, we will assume that it is receiving funding from other public sources and the application will be deemed ineligible. Moving on to section 2. In this section, we want to know more about your project and how it meets the scheme's eligibility criteria. You should first provide a brief overview of your project proposal. This should include its aims and objectives, its key elements, and what it intends to achieve. While this section is not scored, it should provide the assessment panel with sufficient information to describe your proposed project. You should indicate the expected duration of your project. It is sufficient to include the months and year for each, as the exact date will be dependent on the date you receive your letter of offer. Next, we want to see how your project proposal fits with the scheme's eligibility criteria. These areas will be scored. Firstly, describe the level and type of engagement your project will have with a PSNI. For example, they may be a project partner, or delivering parts of the project, or they may be attending your events. Next, please outline how your project will make a contribution to community safety and/or confidence in policing in your area. For example, through the provision of diversionary activities for young people, through activities with vulnerable people, or through PSNI engagement with hard-to-reach communities. Remember, these should link with the charitable purposes that your project aligns to. You should also indicate how the contribution will be measured and reported at project end. More details on this will be required under section 4 of the application form. Finally, you must let us know which of the charitable purposes your project proposal aligns to. This can be more than one, and briefly describe how it aligns to the charitable purpose or purposes selected. On to section 3. It is important that your organisation has the capacity to manage the funding. Therefore, in this section, you need to tell us the total amount of funding you are requesting. In completing the financial information, you're also required to provide a budget breakdown by completing Appendix 1 of the application form. Let us know if there's any match funding being provided, but remember, this cannot be from another public source. Applicants should note that match funding is not a requirement. Let us know if there are any in-kind contributions. For example, this could be staff time or use of resources. Again, this is not a requirement. You should then give us information about the financial contact for your project. This will be the person that the programme team will liaise with in relation to management of the funding, including claims. You must confirm by ticking this box that you are in a position to provide the most recent official accounts for the organisation. These will be requested as part of pre-contract checks if you have been approved for funding. Finally, you should provide us with information on your financial controls, which should include details of financial or governance procedures or frameworks in place in your organisation. This information will assist in establishing your capacity for managing the funding that you have requested. On to section 4. In this section, we are interested in learning about the expected outcomes and impacts of your project. This should include expected beneficiaries, for example, young people, older people, or community groups. We're interested in learning the expected change that may occur as a result of your project activities. And you should also tell us how you will communicate success within your community through communication tools such as a project launch, press releases, or social media platforms. Applicants should note that specific performance measurements will be agreed with you if you're approved, and these will be included in your letter of offer. On to section 5. In this section, you're required to confirm that you're in a position to submit a copy of your organisation's constitution with your completed application form. You should insert the name of your organisation, and it must be signed by either the chairperson or chief executive. Before submission, please check the following: that you have fully completed sections 1 to 5, that all the appropriate boxes have been ticked, that the application form has been signed by either the chairperson or chief executive of your organisation, that you have completed Appendix 1, the budget breakdown, and have included it with your application form, and that you've included a copy of your organisation's constitution with your completed application. Finally, we're interested in finding out how you became aware of the Police Property Fund and would ask that you tell us in this box. It could, for example, be through your PCSP, through social media, or through word of mouth. If you need any additional information in relation to completing your application, you can contact the programme team on 02890 408 500. Alternatively, you can email us at policepropertyfund@nipolicingboard.org.uk. Finally, good luck with your application.
Hopefully you found that video useful in understanding the nature of the application forms and indeed the way you go about filling those in. And we'll be standing by to answer more questions you may have on that a little bit later. But just want to thank Dolores for her piece of background, and now to hand over to Simon Byrne, the Chief Constable of the PSNI, to say a few words on the opportunities the scheme presents for policing and community safety. Simon.
Well, thank you, Chair, and Dolores. And obviously, it's really good news to be sat here today talking about something that's going to add to local policing. We've got a key promise to communities right across Northern Ireland about being visible, about being accessible and responsive. And I think the Police Property Fund application process sits so well with this. I often think back about my own professional experience working with communities coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, hard to reach communities, people in deprived areas. And my reflection is often small amounts of money can often make the difference, particularly in those small problem solving sort of ideas that bring people together and actually at the end of it leaves the community better, stronger and safer. So I think when you weave your way through the criteria that Dolores has shared with us today, I would encourage people to think hard, to use this money wisely and to be sort of ambitious in how they use the few weeks they've got now between here in March and July to sort of gather the evidence and make sure your applications can be the best we can be. I'm committed to delivering really good neighbourhood policing, and I think this idea and using the money that we either seize from criminals or can't return to victims sometimes is such a good use of this resource to help communities build themselves. So I'm going to hand back to Doug now while we take questions.
Thank you, Simon. Hopefully, Sarah, our programme manager, has been answering your questions while you've been hearing from us and watching the video. And she's been doing that online and will continue to do so. But we've taken just a few of the more common questions which we're going to address as a panel just now. The first one that I'd like to look at is the question, I need to send a copy of my group's constitution with my application form. What is that? Well, if you've not been used to it, then the term constitution may seem a strange thing, but it's basically a written agreement of what your group is doing, both now and what they aim to do. Most constitutions provide information such as aims and objectives, or what their group hope to achieve, powers, what does your group want to be able to do? And in this case, obviously applying for funding is one of the important things. Membership, who can be a member of your group and how many can there be? How many meetings, how frequently do you hold meetings throughout the year? Committee membership and the role of those committees within the group. And then rules of procedure to enable your committee to run smoothly. There are a number of steps you'll need to take formally to adopt your constitution, and more information about these steps can be found on the Charity Commission's website. That's that question. Now, a few others, and we'll go first to Dolores for the next couple of questions.
Thanks, Doug. And one of the questions I've got is, why does my project need to align to one of the charitable purposes? The Police Property Fund regulations require the Policing Board to implement the funds for charitable purposes. In agreeing both the small and large grant schemes, the Board agreed to use the charitable purposes set out in the 2008 Charities Act for Northern Ireland. So just to be clear, you don't have to be registered with the Charities Commission, but your constituted group does have to follow one of the Charities Act target groups. So then the second question I have is, does my PCSP have to be involved? And the answer is no. Your application may still be eligible if your PCSP is not involved in your project. However, PCSPs have excellent links with both the police, other statutory organisations and the local community. In addition, they are local experts with regard to local community safety and policing issues and could therefore enhance your project. So I'll pass back to Dirk now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. And now some further questions that Simon's going to look to address for us. Simon.
Thank you. Well, the question I've got is how do I contact my local police team? And the best way I would encourage people to do this now is we have details of your neighbourhood policing team in each district on our website. So if you want to find out who's the person to go to, use the website to do that quickly and easily.
Thank you, Simon. Going to finish off with one last question here that's come through, and it's to do with schools. Would my school be eligible to apply for funding? Well, the board are keen to ensure that the Police Property Fund does not displace statutory funding. Therefore, schools would not be eligible to apply. However, a PTA or Parent and Teacher Association which is constituted could apply as long as its activities are not funded centrally by the school. Groups should also be mindful that projects cannot carry out fundraising activities for other organisations. Now, hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions at least today, but we recognise there will be more to come, and the programme team here at the board will continue to answer your questions online. And again, if you want to email anything through, they're happy to come back to you at a later date. I'd like to thank Dolores and Simon for being part of this launch this afternoon. All documents relating to the first call of the Small Grants Scheme are now available on our board website. Most importantly, I would like to thank you for your attendance and for your interest in this exciting fund. And I wish you well as you put together your applications, and we look forward to receiving those in the very near future. Thank you all very much.